Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I'm your co-host, JP John Poz, from the two-man power trip. Of course, joining me, the financial wrestling genius himself, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, what's going on? How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, John. And guess what? You are the headline of the week because you broke the internet, broke X, as soon as you announced some big news. Apparently, when I'm searching around, your writing partner had shared it around early January, but and that got some nice attention in the wrestling
Oh
press.
yeah.
But when you put it out there, it really blew up. So, what's it all about?
So we've got a new Bret Hart book coming very soon from ECW Press, hopefully early 2026. But basically, we sat down with Bret, or mostly really I did. It was kind of my brainchild on it. And John Snowden, great author, did the Shamrock book, which was unbelievable. He's done a bunch of MMA books. I mean, he's one of the best writers I've ever seen. So that's why I wanted him to kind of piece everything and put everything together for me and even make it even greater. But basically, I pitched the idea to Bret. I said, Bret, it's great, your book and everything, but that's not necessarily your art, if you will. Like it's not necessarily in a way, it's him talking about the wrestling, but it's not really him breaking down the matches. So I said it would be great to have a book kind of like breaking down your matches. I sent him a list of 100 matches. Some he agreed, some he didn't. Mostly, I would say 90% he agreed with. Some of them he's like, that wasn't that great. Why did you think it was great? And I would tell him why I thought it was great or why it was different. So we're going to try to break down maybe not the 100 best Bret Hart matches, but the Bret Hart era when he comes into his own. I think 92 to 97. We're going to expand a little bit before that and not really touch too much after that. But we're going to talk about pre-Bret and even talk about Stu a little bit. But we're going to bring it all into and really focus on the art of Bret Hart. So we're going to be talking about him versus Piper, and then he'll break it down. I was watching him versus 1-2-3 Kid, and I'm like, man, I was like, it'd be great to hear Brett kind of like break that down, like officially, like just really, really break that down. And it's funny. He goes, "Call me tomorrow." So I texted him. I go, "Look at this. I go, remember this match? He goes, call me tomorrow." So I called him. We talked for like an hour and a half on that match. That
Wow.
25-minute match. So I was like, this is unbelievable. Imagine like, and I said to somebody too, a friend of mine, I was like, man, imagine just being as a kid and being thinking like you're gonna text somebody, or you're gonna write to them and go, "Hey, what do you think about this 1-2-3 Kid match?" They're like, "Call me tomorrow. I'm gonna break it down for you, move for move or whatever." I'm like, "What is?" It was awesome, and he has such good recall, like unbelievable. Because I literally just watched that match, and then he's talking to me about something I literally just saw in the match and breaking it down. And when I saw him at the ISPW show, he told me to come on down and and say hi. So I was like, "I'm in Jersey. Hell yeah, come on down." And he was saying, he's like, "Oh, he's like, remember the 1-2-3 Kid match we were talking about?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "That's a great match for like the guys here today, these indie guys, to watch if it's like mentor versus student type match." And he was talking to me the psychology of what some of the guys should have in the match. If it's an older guy versus a younger guy, the champion versus like a contender. Like, man, he breaks down wrestling. I know some people would be like, "Oh, it's just it's just two guys beating each other up." Not when you watch him and watch the fans how invested they get into everything that they do too. So to me, I love the way he breaks down the match. Obviously, when he fights Diesel, it's a completely different thing. So guess what? I texted Nash. Nash called me. We talked about Bret for a good amount of time, and that's going to be in the book. So it's going to be Bret and stuff, but it's also going to be other guys talking about Bret and their matches. And guess what? Nash said Bret's his best opponent. That's his best matches. And we break down some of the, like, especially Survivor Series. We'll break down the match in total. So, I mean, if you're like a wrestling nerd like me and like a ton of people are, it's awesome. What a project. Talk to Bret for over 25 hours about all these matches. It's just like unbelievable for me to be able to even think about it because I'm at WrestleMania 10 and thinking like, man, this is awesome. But I'm so upset Bret lost to Owen. This is bullshit. Then he wins at the end of the night. We get to hear the whole story about the breaking down everything from start to finish and why he wanted to lose and the accomplishment it did and what he was trying to do with Owen and then later on what he was trying to do with Yoko and it was just what a treat. And obviously you'll see in the book. We almost have to like dial it back because it could be almost too long, so to speak. And I know some people were saying like, how long is it going to be? It could be like, whew, with what's been covered so far, we're thinking like, oh, it's got to be 2 books. He said Press does not want it to be 2 books, so it's going to be one, but it almost has to be scaled back because there's so much meat on the bone.
If it's the stunning success I know it will be, that's when it might open the door for a second. Now, I have
Yeah.
some more questions without revealing too much of what I know as an insider. I know that you are working on another book that wasn't necessarily collaborative. It was more historical. So were you prepared to do this Brett book without Brett? Like, was this a passion project you wanted to do without Brett, or it was really getting that access that you're like, I'm going to do this type of book?
So it's funny when I initially thought of the idea, I'm like, man, it won't be as cool if it's like me breaking down the matches. Yeah, to a certain point, yes, like a fan, especially a longtime fan, yes, they could break down the matches and talk about it, and it could still be good, and there could still be references and interviews and like historical stuff. But I was thinking, I was like, man, it would be so much better if Brett was involved. So it was like, I was like, I worked it to a certain point, and I was like, if he's not going to be involved, I might just side project, passion project, like work on it eventually. But if he's not involved, I'm going to lay the groundwork. I'm going to put a certain point of effort and emphasis into it, but I'm not going to go crazy. If he is involved, and I sent him the pitch through a friend of mine, and then Brett wrote me back, so which was awesome just to think about it. Like, oh, I don't know if he'll go for this pitch, and he did. He loved the idea. So it's one of the things where since he was. It took from like a passion thing to like, all right, this is on the front burner. Now we're going with this. This is moves to the front of the line because it's working on something else too. So this, what you mentioned, the historical thing. So it's more of like, okay, this moves in the front of the line just because he's so invested in it. I'm going to be triply as invested as I was. So if he didn't be involved, it's one of those things where I was like, damn it, I might have to push this to the back burner because I really wanted him in it.
And it sounds like Brett was very generous, A, of his time, but also B, he wasn't I need to be the co-author. He's just more like, let me give you the information. You guys do it, and you have my blessing, that sort of thing.
Yes. Yes. That was like the coolest thing. I was like, "So and you want anything for it? Nope. Do you want to be like co-author? Nope. Should we put your name as like a, co-author? Like, nope. This is your book. You did it. This is your idea. He's like, but you came to me and I want to just, give you whatever I can give you because I think this is such a cool idea. It's like different, obviously, than many other books that have probably ever been out there really about wrestling. So I feel like the era of the Hitman, we're really focusing on the era, and we needed his voice, and he's all over it. So I just feel like he's been awesome. He's one of those guys where I kind of get confused when they say he's bitter because if you like talk to him as much as I talk to him, and texting all this other stuff, overly honest, yes. Bitter, no. And sorry, I know that might upset some people, but I just don't see it. I don't think so.
I think he just no longer has the patience for people that he can't stand. But
But
if he, yeah,
even still though, if you said to somebody like, "Hey, what do you think about Triple H the wrestler?" Right? He's not looking for a job. He's not whatever. 4 out of 10. He wasn't that great, or like 7 out of 10. What he wasn't that great. Oh, he's bitter. Oh, no, I think that's pretty damn honest. Like, you know what I mean? He just didn't think he was that good a wrestler. Then if you say Dynamite Kid and he goes, 10 out of 10, he was awesome. He's just being honest. That's exactly what he thinks.
I think probably one of the interesting parts about it will be the matches that people don't remember as well. What I'd imagine is
Yeah.
there's some Jean-Pierre Lafitte in there, some PCO, and that was
Yes.
really the time that I was like, this guy from the Quebecers is that good? Like, it totally changed my mindset.
I know we've heard a little bit of the backstory of that, but with Brett giving me even more, it's really cool, like of like how he was put in there and this and that. And then of course I do a nice little interview, which will be obviously, transcribed and put into the book as well from John Pierre Lafitte. I interviewed him. When as soon as I mentioned to him, he was so cool. He said, "Call me." He's like, "Call me tonight." My horrible French Canadian accent here. But like, "Call me tonight." He's like, "I want to talk about it." So he's like, "Did Brett mention?" And I said, "Yes, he did. He mentioned 2 matches in a row that were unbelievable. And then he said, he goes, those are my 2 favorite matches." So it was cool that PCO totally is on board, John Pierre Lafitte totally on board. And then obviously Brett was saying how great of a worker he is, and nobody realized how good of a worker he was. Vince was even like, I don't know if this is going to work, like that kind of thing. And obviously they both knocked it out of the park. So that's going to be in there. Obviously some Hakushi matches. You're going to be surprised. You might see Mantar in the book. You might be shocked at that, but you might see him in the book because he's on my list there. But yeah, and obviously before he passed away, I did actually end up talking to Mantar about that match. So one of his favorites too. Crazy how many guys you talk to and they say Brett's one of their favorite matches.
So now, were these like conversations all recorded?
Oh yes. Oh
Now,
yeah.
are they as a podcaster, right? Like you have them recorded. I know it was more candid conversations, but can you go to Brett and be like, "Hey, you know what? I cleaned it up a little bit. Can I start releasing these like in pieces?" Like, you think you'll be ready for that, or it just wasn't intended in that way?
It technically wasn't, but I have like kind of just because I had to edit it and obviously we have to transcribe and stuff. So I did have to make some changes and stuff to it. So like when I'm doing that, I was thinking, I was like, you know what? I was like, I probably could. It's not a thought right now, but down the line, I definitely could. And I'm sure he'd be cool with it because he's just like I don't know, he's kind of cool with everything. He's the hitman. He's just like the cool, calm, collected hitman that we all know. So I think he'd be cool with it. But right now, I'm not thinking about that. Maybe down the line, I probably maybe need to edit a little bit more. But putting it together for transcription for the audio and putting everything together, I kind of have edited and kind of pieced it off and almost kind of put it into episodes, so to speak, because I was sending it a little bit at a time. So, never know. Eventually, that's actually maybe something I should put maybe on more on the front burner. But right now I put it on the back burner.
Yeah, this is the business of the business. So I'm thinking like, like the way your friend Hannibal does things, right? Like something interesting, headline, boom, click. It doesn't have to be the full interview. And then intro roll and out roll by the book, right? Like
Right,
I know you
right. Yeah,
have the wonderful people we know at ECW Press that will be, of course, championing this, but it's always good to support it. Another idea while I'm thinking about it is if a number of these matches are free on, are on YouTube, then maybe you can make like a roll, like, and then
yeah,
like,
yep.
a reference point, refer people back to it, that sort of thing. So ECW Press, right? So your writing partner actually has his own imprint, right? Which Jonathan Snowden, is that his publishing company?
Yeah,
The
hybrid shoot.
Hybrid Shoot, which has done quite well, I think, in its own niche.
Yeah,
But it's
definitely.
it's a niche, nothing wrong with that. But it's not necessarily like in bookstores, that sort of thing. So this seems like a book that's very much mainstream. So is that why you guys decided to go with ECW Press?
Kind of on that too, and he's obviously friends with some of the people at ACW Press, and he just kind of like threw the idea out to them, and they were really because they're Canadian by natural, they're a Canadian company, so they were like just jumping at it, like, oh, it's a Bret Hart book, and we explained to them, and they were really into it. So we thought about hybrid shoot, and they kind of, I guess you could say, made an offer, not that we couldn't refuse or anything like that, but it was just like it was a good offer. So we're like, well, they seem really into it. Like he was kind of like not pushing it on them. He was just asking them like kind of what they thought about it, and they really were like, they're don't shop it anywhere. We want it. So it was just one of those things where like, okay, I think ECW Press would do well with it, and I think they were very very much on board.
Nice. I think there's something like with Canadian authors, and they publish them something with advantages with the government, which is always
Yeah, yeah.
a plus there.
Plus, Hybrid
Um,
Shoot has got so much other stuff going on. Not just John, but like all the other guys under Hybrid Shoot. They have a lot of projects coming out.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to those. And John, I'm going to make you a promise here today. Even though, given my stature, I have access to, well, maybe I'll take the advanced copy from ECW
Wow.
Press, but I'm going to buy my own as well.
Yes, yes, love that.
I
Yes,
think
we
that's very
sold one
important.
copy. Yes, all right, nice.
Nice. And outside of Tyrus, making a third book at the same time, if it doesn't come out the same day, I have no doubt this is going to #1 on Amazon.
Wow, damn, that would be unbelievable. That would be crazy. Jeez, I would love it though.
So looking forward to it.
Thank you. Awesome. Now, as far as the rest of the world, I know I'd love to talk about Bret Hart and the book all day. Really, I really, really would. But we got to talk WWID because this is so fascinating to me because we had been talking about this. And now Dave Meltzer was talking about it. And I know Bix was talking about it too. But this is so interesting to me. Just break down WWID and obviously what you were, obviously trying to fish for here. Because this was an interesting question that I kind of was, going back and forth and am I interested on it or not?
Yeah, so just sort of like kind of getting a temperature for the wrestling world, mostly from X. When WWID started, people were like really excited about it, and every time a talent got signed, people were like, "Yes, it's awesome." And then suddenly you started seeing the logo on like every show from here to there, and Evolve hasn't, well, critically, it hasn't been as big a hit as people maybe were hoping for. I'm not sure what the engagement or viewership is like, but I ran a poll, and I feel like of all the polls that I've ran, given the volume and also the audience, that I think this one like will take it as the most legitimate. If a WWE ID match is on the card, what is your interest level in attending the show? So more than half of people said that it didn't change their interest at all. About a quarter of the people said they were less interested, which was interesting. We'll kind of get into that a little bit later in this segment. And about 25% were either more interested or interested because they hear of ID. And that was interesting to gauge. So we haven't heard of, like big pop in attendance or anything like that with ID talents being on there, whereas people, I wouldn't attribute it too much to it, but it certainly helps a lot where WWE talent are popping up in TNA wrestling, and that seems to make a difference. But the championship tournament for ID is something else, especially when it's a new thing and a young thing. So WWE ID announced that tickets for GCW presents the ID tournament on April 16th as part of the collective will go on until 10 a.m. this Friday. So I remember when Brett announced the collective, he's like, this is not, even half the announcements yet or whatever it is. And then there was a Dragon Gate show that is taking place another part of the venue. This is at the Palms on a Wednesday. So they've stretched it out for WWE related events from Wednesday to Tuesday, right? So a full week. Brett had confirmed that this is its own separate event. There's also future stars of wrestling as well. So a different Brett on X, I don't know this person, but Atlantis Brett said the indies are supposed to be an alternative. And that really sort of like captures the feeling here, because we sort of feel like, okay, like it's something different than WWE and so on. And every time people bring them in, it like gets attention to varying degrees. And certainly for GCW, it's a very smart move and a great opportunity to have this. But it kind of changes the narrative a little bit. Now, there was some information that some people are attributing as misinformation in the Wrestling Observer. Dave Meltzer reported on guidelines for independent wrestling promoters with WWE ID talent. Here's the report. When it comes to WWE ID talent, the deal according to a contract is Sapolsky puts the matches together and gives scripts to the promoter. The promoter pays the talent and can push that the talent comes from WWE. WWE covers the travel cost with a stipend, and the promoter pays the difference if the travel costs are larger than the stipend. In response to this, Brett Lauderdale responded, and he denied that, as well as Defy Wrestling denied that. So in terms of Brett Lauderdale, he said, Gabe doesn't put the matches together. I've never seen or heard of a script. We are allowed to push WWE ID on talent announcements, but we don't. Not aware of any travel stipend and so on. So now that might be a good question to ask Brett after the collective tournament to see if anything is different in that regard, because he doesn't really have a choice of which talents are going to be in this tournament. They're being sent to him. So what are the economics of that? But, and I know Meltzer later deleted this or whatever it may be, so maybe it didn't have any credibility at all. But if it did, I feel like maybe there's a different deal with, what is it, Black and Brave? Actually, we're going to mention them in a moment, but, or Reality of Wrestling, their official training partners, WWE ID talent are being sent there and so on. That's more of a relationship than those that may just float to Defy or something like that. Big Trouble Ben Bishop, who's a delight to follow on X. Mm-hmm. Internet wrestling community from 2015 2019. Wouldn't it be cool if WWE actually cared about the indies? Internet wrestling community in 2025. WWE needs to stay away from the indies. So it's kind of funny in that way. So in terms of sort of like perception and so on, and I know I'm saying this sort of like in the light of John Moxley basically getting impaled by a nail-ridden baseball bat. That was really gross. I don't know, like, sorry, I don't want to go on a tangent, but like, are you really going to take that risk with like advertisers and TBS executives? That's really, excuse my language, asinine. So I don't know why they did that. But in terms of perception and WWE's brand, like, there was Black and Brave. Now I have the name right. They ran a show in Davenport, Iowa, and I'm just gonna read it a little bit about it that was covered in the local press. Underground pro wrestling at Gabe's, not Sapolsky's. Amidst severe storm threats, over 100 people gathered to watch an underground pro wrestling event at Gabe's in Iowa City on Friday, March 14th. The event featured 4 matchups between professional wrestlers of the Black and Brave Wrestling Academy based out of Davenport, Iowa. All wrestlers who performed have completed a 3-month training process and traveled to various independent shows across the Midwest to showcase their talents. And then you see like whatever it is, it's basically like no ring wrestling, and they're slamming each other with random objects and all that. So like for an independent show, it's sort of like unique. And I know it was a thing here in Brooklyn for a while, but like this is a WWE partner, right? So like training partner. So what's the look on them? So nothing wrong, nothing was broken from the show, but meaning like, again, I think there's like that need for like formality and structure, and it just doesn't look good for the WWE brand, even if it doesn't necessarily travel that way.
Really, I don't know. That was crazy. Won't get into it because obviously we're not talking about that, but that spot was a little crazy. Looking into speaking about a little crazy. What about GC Dub? What about Game Changer Wrestling?
So I didn't get like a final attendance or even row count for Atlantic City on March 15th or 16th, but it didn't look, it didn't look great. It seems like Atlantic City has been down for a while, which we've talked about, but one of their main draws, A, the summer, so good weather in June, and B, deathmatch, talking about that sort of stuff, Tournament of Survival X, Cage of Survival. So that'll be a good test for GCW to see, how they hold up in the market. But looking at some upcoming shows, Talia Hall, March 29th in Chicago. The front row is sold out, and then the various, little opera boxes are sold out. But you can only search on the sites ticket section up to 6 tickets. So rows second row and beyond still have that amount of tickets left. Then in Sauget, Illinois, a market that seemed to be picking up for a while, but then dropped back down. 10 or more front row tickets remaining at the end of the month. Philly, so this is of course at Harrah's. Basically Philly, I know that it's Brett actually gave more clarity. Chester, Pennsylvania, but really the Philly market. So for that event, the front row is almost gone. 3 tickets remaining as of this, but 10 tickets or more second row and beyond. Now, just a mention of the collective. Again, I'm not going to go through all of those shows until we get pretty close. I guess we're not so far away now, right? So in the next week or two. But the Dragon Gate Rebirth show, which is also on Wednesday, so busy time. The third row ringside remains, as well as general admission. So they've moved the first 2 rows. So you can, if I'm looking at the correct dates, right, you can go to the championship tournament at 4 p.m. With GCW. I'm not, let's see if I see the Future Stars of Wrestling. That one is on Friday, so not to confuse that. But on Wednesday, you could first do the ID tournament, and then later that night, return for Dragon Gate. I think. Well, we'll see. I think it's in the same part of the hotel, unless they're using the bigger section that they're using for the rest of the collective.
What is going on in the world of the NWA?
So, firstly, a show we've been talking about for a while, Hard Times 2. The ticket sales have certainly picked up in the Dothan Civic Center, one of my favorite old-time venues. Basically the floor portions that they had opened are basically sold out, or nearly so. So they opened up like the balcony part. The last couple times they were there, they weren't able to do so. The first time they were there, it caught a lot of attention. I admit that might have been the first Hard Times, and I'm not sure if it was fully sold out, but that show did really well. Now, Wrestle World on X, it's Wrestle World, had a good point, which I hadn't really thought about, is that they don't do these shows as like streaming pay-per-views anymore. They just record the whole thing and then they chop it up for X as episodes. So I'm not sure if the reason that they're doing this is it's just not worth the cost. They're not getting enough buys on Fight or Triller or whatever it may be, or to do it as a standalone type of thing. Or maybe their extended deal with X. Remember, they were only supposed to be on there for 5 weeks. Maybe they're looking for first run exclusive content, and that's what they'd rather serve. Now, May 17th, 2300 Arena, the Crockett Cup, still early. Looks like the first row, I think the whole first row is gone, and then some tickets here and there. Now, the most fun part about the NWA upcoming is that, certainly like our friend Kevin Kleinrock with Mass Republic, they do a lot of like festivals, tequila and tacos and so on. So NWA getting in on the game for Sacramento Grilled Cheese Festival featuring the NWA. Offering samplings of craft beer, wine and spirits, food tasting from top restaurants throughout the area, live music, and in-ring action from the NWA. This 2-day event promises to do more than simply melt hearts and cheeses. The NWA said in a press release. Admission, this is interesting. I guess a lot more going on Saturday, but Saturday is $100 for entry and grants visitors an adults-only affair featuring unlimited grilled cheese, beer, and wine samples. I guess you could get a lot of the alcohol that day, I would speculate. The $10 admission on Sunday, I guess while you're recovering, you bring the family, allows visitors to get into the event for a family day featuring games and face painting with food and beverages available at an additional cost. NWA will perform on both days. In addition to pro wrestling, the event features bands and music and all of that. But kind of cool, like, especially we talk about like NWA, they have talent, under contracts and so on. This is like a sold event, so it's good to get some revenue there. Now, I found something interesting, John. This might be of my own ignorance because I only became aware of her in the last 2 or 3 years. I didn't know Natalia Markova has been wrestling for like 15 or more years already.
Oh, I didn't know that either. Wow. Damn.
Yeah. And she started her career in Russia. Then she traveled, I looked it up on Cage Match or whatever, but, and then traveled to Europe. And then it was, Shine? It was the first one potentially who booked her in Florida. And then she's been attached with NWA for a few years.
Wow, didn't realize that. Interesting. Obviously, she's one of their big acts right now, so interesting.
Yeah, and when I saw Green Day at Citi Field and Smashing Pumpkins was sort of like the semi-main event, that she was on the stage with like Corgan's Kids and so on. So she's like very baked into to everything that they do.
Nice. Love that. Now, what's going on in TNA Wrestling? We were kind of mentioning them before, obviously, with the success that they've had teaming up at WWE. But what else is going on with them?
So first, and not the biggest story, but kind of like an interesting one, given their relationship with WWE, they've been promoting a couple of things on X. The one with WWE is the experience the thrill of the Topps WWE Chrome Challenge and Top Slam. Collect the biggest stars of WWE while hunting for redemption tickets and Chrome entry packs to win a hobby box. So I'd assume this would be something like Topps, working out a deal with TNA. But sort of the market being right for that, given their positive relationship. I don't really follow WWE socials, so it might have been tweeted out by WWE similarly, but I've only seen it with TNA. And a good tie-in also, which makes a lot of sense, and with the wrestling movie, women's wrestling movie that TNA was promoting that a little bit as well. TNA Wrestling celebrates women's wrestling with a cross-promotion tribute to former wrestler Mildred Burke and the golden age of female athletes. Now, the next thing that's always fun is sort of like, what was the attendance in El Paso, right? We know it was really good, and then suddenly you start seeing all these numbers all over the place. So first, mine is speculative, and I'm not claiming that it should be definitive number and that I've solved it. But in my research, El Paso County Coliseum has generally 5,628 permanent seating. Some list 6,500. So to me, it looked like a half house setup. So somewhere between 2,750 and 3,000 people. Now let's say 3,000. So I think that's a solid number, and that's where you started seeing it. Ellie Samuel on X, who tweets a lot about TNA, as noted earlier today, TNA Sacrifice tonight in El Paso is sold out, with tomorrow's TNA taping expected to sell as well. We're told that over 3,000 are expected in each night. William Gardner wrote 3,000 plus in attendance. Now, the interesting part is that JBL wrote they are doing everything right. It's unbelievable. They're selling out arenas. They're selling out most places they're going. They had 4,000 people down in El Paso. So the number, the legend is already growing. But also, one of the most interesting parts about it is that Rafael Morphy, who had been an AEW executive and, of course, has been involved in the business forever, and was even mentioned in the recent book about WrestleMania 3, more of being a fan at the time and traveling to Detroit. But thanks, this is TNA, for allowing me a small contributing part of a historic weekend of live events for the company in El Paso. Record-breaking ticket sales for consecutive shows. Great to help out at these events. I love pro wrestling. It seems that I was confirming with his LinkedIn account that he's still with Barclays, but maybe he has time here and there to get involved with TNA. PW Insider reporting that pro wrestling business executive veteran Morphy has been integral to this weekend, providing counsel to the company on their live event business strategy, restructuring of their touring, and venue selections. Morphy has been credited as extremely influential on the success of this weekend's live events. Now, the talk of finding better TV deals always comes up, so to keep that warm, Kazarian said on the JBL and Joe Briscoe show, talking internally to management, that is the focus. Getting distribution and getting on a bigger network. Getting on Sportnet 360 in Canada when WWE went to Netflix was massive. That's the equivalent of ESPN in Canada. If we could get that, we're in the era of streaming. So dare I say a Paramount Plus, something like that. I know management is working tirelessly on doing that for us. With the momentum we have, I would hope by the end of the year, we would have a different distribution deal getting more eyes on us. So that's, always the dream for every wrestling company, if only, right? So Slammiversary, things are continuing to move along. 2,429 tickets, according to WrestleTix. So just looking at the closer upcoming shows, St. Joseph, Missouri, looking at the first night, and definitely not 4,000 or 3,000 people there, or 2,500 in terms of advanced sales yet, as we're about a week out as we record this. Just some of the first few rows are gone, so quieter there. For Unbreakable in Vegas, so part of the WrestleMania weekend Michigas craziness, the reserve tickets are sold. But the GA are still available, and it's showing on the map a darker shade, which means that a lot of tickets are still available for the GA. Now in LA, it shows like few tickets remaining in terms of like when you first click in, but they're just using a small section of this 10,000 seat venue. So hard to tell, but we shall see. In the aforementioned in previous weeks, Brampton, Ontario, that looks like it's off to a pretty solid start given their connections, the Asper family's connections there. That's not surprising. What did I miss? I think I missed one thing. Oh, Irvine, California. So Irvine, California. The Bren is a 5,608 seat indoor arena on the campus of University of California, Irvine. So looks like a decent start to that for them. And back to Ontario, that's a hockey or basketball, can hold up to 5,000 people. Looks like they're starting out with maybe a little bit more than a half house setup. Next, TNA Plus has been revamped, and my thought of it is that by lowering the price, will they get more people who make up for the difference in price, or it will be the same passionate people that now will want a discount on their subscription? But basically, without going through all the details, they've moved the price down pretty significantly for the TNA Plus event.
Yeah, if you look at it, saving is significant if you do it annually. That's for sure. But
Yeah,
as
I'm
far,
just. Oh, sorry, John. I'm
I was
just
going to say,
curious. Yes, you go.
oh, do you think that that'll entice more people to do it? Because it's almost like more bang for your buck, really. I mean, that's like $60 a year there.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Like maybe now's the time, right? Because their champions are pretty high profile. People are curious about it. You have them floating through WWE. Even Joe Henry is going to be on Raw, right? Or he was on Raw. I'm not sure what the story was with that. So like, it's not just limited to NXT. So maybe this is a good time. Give it a try.
Hey, why not? As far as MLW is concerned, what's going on? They seem to have some big news coming out of MLW.
Yeah, so something that broke shortly after we recorded a little bit early last week, but something we can chew on here a little bit more. MLW has appointed Emmy-winning actor and wrestler Paul Walter Hauser as executive producer. In addition, MLW has signed with Hauser's management company, Artist First, for representation with the goal of securing television and streaming distribution, as well as brand licensing partnerships. Let's skip ahead here. As executive producer, Hauser will play a major role in shaping the creative and business direction of MLW, as well as boosting its promotional reach across media platforms and driving new content initiatives. I've been a lifelong fan of wrestling, and MLW represents everything I love about the sport: hard-hitting action, compelling characters, and innovative storytelling. I'm thrilled to join MLW as executive producer and look forward to working alongside the team. Hauser transitioned from Hollywood to pro wrestling in what he called the reverse Dwayne Johnson. Now, Court Bauer said bringing Hauser on board as executive producer and teaming up with Artist First marks a major milestone for MLW. Paul's passion and creative insight, combined with the industry-leading expertise of Artist First, will propel MLW to new heights and expand our presence across multiple platforms. So I think it's something different. It kind of sounds like they're giving Hauser the keys to the castle. The Paul Walter Hauser thing, he gets a lot of attention where he goes. I kind of don't get it exactly. Were you familiar with his work in Hollywood before the wrestling stuff?
Yeah, because I watch Cobra Kai, so I know he's the Stingray character on Cobra Kai. He was actually very good. He's actually a pretty damn good actor. I just love how he's kind of doing it backwards. He's getting into wrestling now after he got famous. Usually, I don't know. You don't see a lot of famous guys that love wrestling. Like, oh, I'm going to start wrestling. It just, I don't know. So maybe like Bad Bunny, and maybe it's a little bit more prevalent now. But I don't know. It's usually like LT, with like after his career's over. I mean, the guy he's still really popular in Hollywood and obviously getting a lot of gigs. So he must just love the wrestling business.
Okay, fair enough. Like, I guess it's good for MLW, right? Like they need something
Yeah, get a
different.
little buzz. Yeah.
Although at the gate, apparently they're not doing badly. Meaning MLW Battle Ride sells out in LA. So with this venue here, what I could tell online was that it could be up to 1,400 capacity. I'm thinking, that this is more of like a ballroom type of setup. So maybe if it's like a big cocktail party, so something like that. a little too lazy to count every dot on the map, although I have it saved from before it closed out of saying sold out. But it looks to me to be about 1,000. So certainly a win there for them. Also, Chicago Azteca Lucha in May looks, in terms of its reserve seating, looks like there's just a few dots on the board there. New York in June, it's still a little bit early for, so most of those tickets are actually about half in terms of reserve still remain. And of course, in Dallas in September, not too many tickets released yet. So some of the first row sold out, some of the second here and there, but they might get there in Dallas, and depending on how many seats they release. Certainly a big win for them last time they were in Dallas, and a smart move to announce the show early to get things going.
What is going on in New Japan Pro Wrestling? Because it seems like even they have some pretty good news, just as far as maybe not sold out, but a decent amount of tickets sold for their U.S. shows.
Yes. So, in terms of Chicago Windy City Ride, it's like we talked about in previous weeks. It's been a test in terms of like how much are people interested in New Japan still. Certainly, Tanahashi's last U.S. match is the big draw, and they've been going a clip of about 100, 120 tickets a week in terms of moving it along. So, in the context of like 2018, would would 3,300 tickets be a big deal for Tanahashi's retirement match? Probably not, but in today's context, any promotion that's not named WWE and that's not named AEW most weeks that does over 3,000 tickets, that's impressive. So,
Yep.
and probably the momentum will build. It's not so far away as we record this, but it'll probably build like in terms of the week or two before. So maybe a little bit after your first hearing this. Now, somebody had a good point about the Ontario, California show. Actually, they did not have a great point. I don't think they were looking too closely. It is on a Friday. They were sort of saying, why are they doing it on a Wednesday? It is not occurring on a Wednesday. Friday, May 9th. So 737 tickets distributed of a 3,721 seat setup. Let's see. They kind of need a draw there. This might be a little bit more ambitious for them in terms of drawing a big house.
It does seem like okay, just as far as the Tanahashi retiring, like 3,000, that's it. But to me, that's a pretty big number, especially because there's so much wrestling out there, and obviously they've lost a lot of star power and they've lost a ton of guys to AEW. So I think that's great. Maybe that other show, maybe not so great, but that show it definitely a good draw for
Yeah.
New Japan.
The one thing that I guess that they're losing out on is that, and I think New Japan has done this sort of mistake before. This would be the type of thing that people would travel for. And it's the week before all the WrestleMania stuff. So, if somebody is like a super fan and they travel, like you're asking them 1 week after the other to travel. So that's probably where they lose like percentage of people, maybe like 500 to 1,000. Maybe in the overall picture, it doesn't matter, but that could probably have been tweaked a little bit better if it was possible.
Well said. Good point. What in the heck is the Bloodline family business? What is this all about?
Yes, so my Google alerts came to the rescue. I pulled this out of the famed here and there section because it's an article. Now, it's from KALW, and the author is Demetrius Johnson. So I don't know if it's if
Whoa,
I mean
the
maybe
Demetrius
that's a
Johnson?
yeah, no, that's my question. Like maybe it's just a common name and so on. I don't know if Demetrius Johnson is a journalist as well. Very well could be. Don't want to start any rumors, but whomever it is, it's Demetrius Johnson that wrote this article. So I cut it a little bit, but it's interesting in terms of like the outer branches of the bloodline, those who haven't yet broken through, or that sort of thing, especially on the younger side. Like how is the bloodline thing like affecting their booking and popularity and so on? So interesting article. I cut it down a little bit, but I wanted to share a fair amount of it. In the Bay Area's world of wrestling, Polynesian wrestlers are small but influential, and they have a rich history. Today, we meet a wrestler from a Samoan wrestling dynasty. In the heart of Vacaville, at the Journey Downtown Theater, two Polynesian wrestlers stand in a spotlight. Different colored lights flash through the arena. Fans packing close to the ring, which is covered with blood, thumbtacks, and broken glass. Wrestler Journey Fatu grabs the mic and addresses the crowd. There was something deep down inside me that was born on March 12th, 1996. Oh, well, we missed his birthday. Happy
Oh,
belated
yeah.
birthday. As the
Happy birthday.
crowd listens intently, Journey acknowledges someone special in the audience. Shout out to my mom. She's up there in the corner. The crowd erupts in chants of thank you, mama. Journey speaks in his first language, Samoan, thanks his mother for loving him, his brothers, his sister, and his father. Then, with raw emotion, Journey delivers a powerful statement. One more thing, without my mom, there wouldn't be a SmackDown. That's awesome. Welcome to
Hmm.
the family business. But for Journey, his most personal connection is his father, Sam Fatu, who made his name in the ring under different monikers. First, as well, we know Time Kid, Samoan Savage. Growing up in the business, Journey didn't always understand that his father what his father did for a living. When I was little, I didn't know what my dad's occupation was. We watched wrestling, but I never knew. I had no clue. I was a very bad kid. One of those snot-nosed kids running around, flipping you off and messing with you. A big part of pro wrestling is the constant travel from one show to another. Traveling from state to state, Arizona, LA, Vegas, Sacramento, San Francisco, back to LA, Arizona. We were in the car for Lord knows how long. Journey remembers the people in the car with them looking a little unusual. You know, there's a lady with a mohawk, this guy who has slick blonde hair, the other guy who has a big mustache. He later realized they had been riding along with Luna Vachon, George the Animal Steel, and Ox Baker. Growing up in the wrestling world, it was almost inevitable that Journey would step into the ring, but it wasn't until 2015 that he finally did and took one phone call, the call that changed everything. The call came from his brother, Jacob Fatu, Samoan werewolf, who was recently signed by WWE. He was asking me, what are you doing this weekend? I'm going to be out for some wrestling. I need a tag partner. It's either now or never. That was it. Journey had his first match, and his father watched from the sidelines. My dad said, you were having fun in there for your first match. Journey's dad praised his selling, his ability to react convincingly to an opponent's move. Journey wanted to carry on the family legacy, but also be his own kind of wrestler. He found his identity in deathmatch wrestling. For Journey, though, it's not about smashing another wrestler with fluorescent lights and splashing blood in the ring. The legacy that I'd love to leave behind is somebody who truly cared about deathmatch wrestling. People used to call these guys marks and idiots that just swing stuff. We're idiots that do art. And we make this beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
Well said by Journey Fatu. Now, you mentioned here and there. That's obviously the greatest topic of all time, my favorite topic of all time. Let's talk here and there.
So, John, bookending it here, we put
Yes.
you on the spotlight to start the show. Now you're starting at the here and there. ISPW 1000 in attendance. Bret Hart and the Mighty Maccabee.
I loved it. I didn't know Jeff was going to be there, Jeff Buchanan, the Mighty Maccabee. So I ran into him. We watched the whole show together. I was hanging out with Brett for a little bit, but for the most part, I was with Maccabee basically the whole night. We were critiquing the show. The Danny Moff versus Crowbar cage match was pretty crazy, especially since Crowbar did a jump off the top of the cage onto Moff, who was on a table, and oh, man, that was kind of crazy. So
I think I
it
saw
was
a
a good
clip of
show.
that.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Good show though. We enjoyed ourselves.
So, John, knowing the market is like, from like my context being a couple steps removed, ISPW feels like that, like true successful indie that we knew and loved like in the mid 90s, where it's sort of like families, you like wrestling, it's kind of expensive to go to Prudential Center, come and enjoy a show in the high school. We're going to draw well, you're going to recognize a lot of the stars, up and coming people, things will be successful, we'll come back, fundraising, all that sort of thing.
100%. Yep. All of that. felt old school. Like when I first walked in, I was like, "Wow, I thought the wrestling was dead. What happened here? Why is there so many people here?" As I park, super far away from the building, and I'm like, walking into Hagerstown High School. I'm like, "Holy crap!" Like I guess wrestling is not dead. I guess people are still interested. A ton of kids, obviously. A lot of the smartness was though having Brett there to tie it all in, and they had a charity going on. They had this big sponsor who apparently loves sponsoring shows in that area because he's a huge wrestling fan. So they really knew what they were doing. Great job by Tommy Fierro and the boys at ISPW.
Nice. So talking about longtime successful promoters, Northeast Wrestling, they got a little bit quiet with their Poughkeepsie market. So, of course, that's ACW that is now running the formerly named Mid-Hudson Civic Center with their show coming up May 17th, and currently 399 tickets distributed. So that's something to watch in itself. But NEW is moved itself in terms of a major show much closer to me in White Plains. Now, to me, I consider the White Plains venue to be the Westchester County Center to be like when WWE's like top C market, meaning that they could go there and like sell out or nearly sell out, like pretty much no matter like in what era, whatever it may be. They might have like burned it out a little bit as they were using it for like Superstars tapings and Raw tapings and so on, like in the mid 90s. But in and around that, they've always drawn. There was one independent show that had, I think, Sid and Shane Douglas on it, like during the peak of wrestling, that I think sold out itself. TNA ran there. I think it was limited seeing that they opened up. There was sort of word that it was sold out, but I just don't feel like that was a full venue. We would have heard a lot more about that, but they're trying out the market. It's an interesting test in comparison to Poughkeepsie. Poughkeepsie's less ambitious, smaller venue. Now, also like White Plains is an underserved, meaning that people don't necessarily come to their town, but White Plains, it's kind of like, it is a suburb of like New York City in Westchester, right? Like, and people work in Manhattan, whatever. So like to go to the Garden or something like that is not a problem. So to see how that compares, because they pretty much have moved on from the Poughkeepsie market at the moment. So what else is going on? So a fun little thing, unfortunately, has come to an end. Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, QD Marshall has announced that it's ending. We want to thank every fan, wrestler, and crew member who made this journey special, and for every donation made to the Dusty Rhodes Foundation. Please continue to support that. Then there's going to be something called One Fall Wrestling that will kind of replace it in some of the venues in the area that they're running. When Turnbuckle Wrestling was announced, I did send them a message to guest on the show. They didn't take us up on it, but I'm not going to say that's correlation, but maybe they should have gotten out there a little bit more. House of Glory, we had been watching the Mercedes Moné March 15th, how ticket sales were going and so on. So this was the day before, and I think it was really like a price point thing. They had been lowering, I believe, the VIP stage seating. It was as low as $150, which included the t-shirt, event poster, a bag, and bar hostess. 20 or more seats remained as of the day before. The second and third row, 20 or more seats remained, as well as general admission. But the front row was sold out. But interestingly, the fourth and fifth row were as well. So that indicates a price point. Kevin Kleinrock and the Masked Mania crew, they're running two very big venues. Some work to do, and we wish them luck on continuing to move tickets along. But at the moment, May 3rd in the Gas South Arena in Duluth, Georgia, 573 tickets. And May 4th in the Bojangles Coliseum, 359 tickets distributed. I think they need a real draw, something compelling to bring the fans in. And finally, we don't talk about it as much, but apparently they have seasons. I thought it was just 52 weeks, but new season of United Wrestling Network, announced by Dave Marquez on LinkedIn, begins on April 4th and we start with a bang. This year, you'll see talent from AEW, WWE ID, New Japan, and UWN favorites battle for title shots and in-ring excellence. Big thanks to our advertising and broadcast partners, especially Gray Media. Check your local listings for time and channel. Our next television event is March 25th at the Irvine Improv.
Nice. Look at that. Look at Dave looking all snazzy in that picture with the suit on. Also, you got to mention Homicide retiring. Kind of maybe out of nowhere, they found a cyst on his brain. So, got to mention Homicide. One of my all-time favorites. Love Homicide. He is the man. He was great. One of the best. Maybe that Ring of Honor championship match with Danielson could go down in history too. That was unbelievable. So,
Yeah,
hopefully, best to Homicide.
in that like era, that time and place, right? Like he was there with like all-time legends, but like he had the belt and no one questioned it. So he could, he could certainly hang with them. It was great. Something I always felt bad about was, remember, I think it was that TNA 3-hour special when Hogan debuted, and they had that weird like Thunderdome cage
Oh, so
where
bad.
you
Yeah.
had to climb out the top, and he like something about it, he just couldn't get there. And I know it's like, right, like LEX, obviously he ended up doing very well, but like there was just something that like really knocked him down several pegs. Like it was hard to watch, but not to be negative, but like I think Homicide has probably been on more non WWE cards that I've gone to in the last 20 years than any other wrestler. And it's always been a pleasure. A good friend of Catalyst Wrestling as well. So sorry to hear it's not necessarily on his own terms, but we wish him good health and success in whatever he does next. And hopefully he wants to stay involved in wrestling in whatever capacity works for him.
One of the greats, no doubt about it. Good luck to Homicide. So let's wrap this bad boy up. Head towards the plugs. You follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. How about you, Lovey?
So TrumpMania, lots of talk in the air. So learn more about Trump and the WWE. Go to Amazon, type in my name, Lavie Margolin, TrumpMania. 2020 election special. You can listen to the Audible version as well. Ebook. Check out my long form articles on LionCubJobSearch.com. And as it says in the subheader, the business of the business is on LinkedIn. We are well over 100 members at this point. So come on in, join the fun.
All right. Great stuff as always, Lavi. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. See you right back here at the next time for the business of the business. See you next week, folks.